Eric Topol is one of the leading medical researchers in the world. He's a cardiologist, scientist, and author who has spent much of his career pioneering new ways to help people live longer and healthier lives. Topol's research has included the development of new treatments from medicines to procedures, and he's also contributed to our understanding of how technology, particularly AI, will transform the medical field. In his latest book, Super Agers, he provides an evidence-based guide to feeling young well into your 80s. At a time when the world is awash in social media personalities claiming to have solutions to everything from losing weight to slowing aging, Topol's book cuts through the noise with just the facts of the latest medical research, what works and what doesn't. On this episode of The InnerView, I'll speak to Eric Topol about his new book and what he believes are the key pillars to a long and healthy life. And Dr. Eric Topol joins us now on The InnerView. Thanks so much for joining us. Dr. Topol, what is a super ager?
Well, we would define it as someone who's over age 85, who's never had cancer, cardiovascular disease, or any neurodegenerative disease.
Can you tell me why you felt it was important as a cardiologist, as a scientist, as a doctor to write this book now?
Well, because there's an exciting opportunity now for us to have many more, dominant even, super agers, or we call the welderly, because we have new abilities to prevent these three major age-related diseases.
And why are we in an age where this is more possible? Is it because we have more information? Is it because of AI? Tell me a little bit about the tools that are making it more possible for us to create more super agers.
Right. Well, it's both those things you mentioned. We have much more information, layers of data for each person. That includes their medical records and their labs and their images, but also their genetics, their proteins, specific biomarkers, environmental exposures and inputs. So all these data, layers of data, with multimodal AI can define who is at risk for which of these major age-related diseases and when, not just yes or no, but when this will manifest, because each of them take over 20 years to incubate in our body before we have any of these conditions. So we're at this unique time in medicine when, because of all the information, billions and billions of data points for any given person, and the ability to analyze that with AI, we can not just define risk, but use that to prevent the disease from ever happening.
There's a lot of information out there right now, a lot of influencers, a lot of so-called medical experts that are out there promising longevity. It's a crowded field. People are not just talking about super aging, which still accepts the idea that you will age. There are people saying, no, you won't age. Maybe you won't die. I can think of Brian Johnson as well. Tell me your thoughts on him and that crowded field out there.
Well, it's really a real tragedy as I see it, because they are marketing longevity. They are selling things, hawking anti-aging supplements that have no evidence, pseudoscience. So that's one group, these companies and these so-called influencers. If they're an influencer and they're selling something, they already have lost credibility. On the other hand, there are some companies that are doing great science to reverse aging, like cellular reprogramming, senolytics, rejuvenating the thymus gland, all sorts of strategies. But those are a long ways off. I hope they work. I hope we can someday reverse the aging process. But I am willing to accept the aging process if we can prevent the major diseases that it is linked to. And that's why this strategy is very different. It's scientific and evidence based. And the biggest part is being able to control our immune system and preserve its integrity throughout our life.
And just staying on this comparison a little bit, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into what we do here on the program. Just as we reached out to you, you would have no doubt got an email from Melis, we would have reached out, invited you to the program. There are two interesting characters that we reached out to over the past year. One of them with hundreds of thousands of followers, associated with an Ivy League university in the anti-aging or de-aging, whatever you want to call it, field. Somebody highly respected online by hundreds of thousands of followers, as I say. And somebody else with millions of followers on Instagram who, and I don't want to give any names here, but to give you a bit of an idea, this person deals a lot with how our bodies process carbohydrates and uses a deity in their name. We reached out to both these people and they asked for some talking points. And so we sort of said, this is what we want to talk about, give a little list. And with both of them, we'd included some of the criticism. And some people say that maybe this is not so scientific or maybe this doesn't check out. And the response that we got from both of them was, we'll only do the interview if you do not ask us about any criticism from fellow doctors, fellow scientists, or anything out there that is in any way, shape, or form critical of us. Well, what do you make of that?
Well, that's telling. It's sad because these are people, you didn't identify them, but I have an idea who you're referring to. They should stand up to criticism. Where is the evidence? So, many things work in mice and rodents, but many of these things have never been shown to be safe and effective in people. Reversing aging is a daunting task. The human body is incredibly complex, and each of our organs, like our brain and our immune system, which are pivotal, they are extraordinarily complex. To be able to reverse aging, I hope we will, but the hype and the financial incentives for these people and the unwillingness to debate, that's a problem.
Let's go to first principles a little bit and maybe start with nutrition. In a nutshell, what would your advice be to those people who want to someday be super agers and they don't want to go down that path of whether they have coronary issues or cancer, etc. Nutrition-wise, your best advice is what?
Well, the Mediterranean diet is kept getting proven time after time. Yesterday, we saw an important study that showed that even people who have the highest risk with 2 copies of ApoE4, they had a 35% reduction of Alzheimer's risk with the Mediterranean diet. So that's one thing. The second is, of course, the avoidance of ultra-processed foods, which are pro-inflammatory. And also there's foods like red meat and many things that also are pro-inflammatory. So we want to use a diet that is healthy to reduce inflammation. And we also, of course, don't want to be overweight or heavy because that's also a pro-inflammatory problem. So using nutrition to derive our energy source, but also to help suppress inflammation in our body.
Michael Pollan says, don't eat anything that your grandmother wouldn't recognize. Is that sound advice?
Sure. Very good advice.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to exercise. What do we need to do?
Well, the customary advice was aerobic exercise, whether it be brisk walking, a bicycle, treadmill, those sorts of things for 30 minutes, 5 times a week. But now it's very clear that's not enough. We also want to have resistance, strength training at least a couple of times for 30 minutes twice a week, and also balance training to reduce the propensity for falls, but also to increase our brain proprioception. So the type of exercise really is combining the features of getting our cardiovascular system trained with aerobic, getting our whole musculoskeletal system in better shape with the strength training, core training, and also having good balance. And that can be markedly improved with training. So exercise has more dimensions than it used to be, but the proof that it has benefit is overwhelming. And of the three things, the big three, diet, exercise, sleep, this one has the most extraordinary body of evidence.
Yeah, you look in fantastic shape. You're 71 years old. You're looking in top shape. Are you doing a mix of all of this sort of balance training, cardio, weight training, all of that?
Exactly. I try to do that every day. And, cumulatively, it's somewhere between 7 to 10 hours a week, but try to devote at least an hour a day towards this, which I think is really important. That's what's going to help keep us young in terms of getting away from the the big three age-related diseases.
Right. One of the big questions is supplementation. You walk into any store, it doesn't even have to be a GNC or a supplementation store. Any store, any convenience store, supermarket, whatever, there are thousands of supplements. Never mind just the basic ones, the vitamin D or B12 or whatever. There's anything and everything. What do we do? This is bewildering.
Yeah, there aren't any supplements that have any proof in healthy people. It's one thing if you had a blood test and you had low vitamin B12 or low vitamin D, that's different. But otherwise, none of these supplements have any data to support their use. And that includes things like NAD plus and a long, long list of what people are taking that there is no evidence to support it. There's potential risk. There's also associated costs. And if anything is claiming an anti-aging supplement, that's complete bunk because there's no supplement that's been proven to reverse or modulate the aging process in human beings.
Okay. I'm assuming this is sort of all things being equal, but if, say, you do blood work and it comes back and your doctor says, well, you're sort of low on, I don't know, B12 or something like that, you should supplement, but only in that case?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And we don't even know, like, for example, if you have a low vitamin D level and you supplement with vitamin D, we don't even know if that helps, but it makes sense. It's okay.
Okay,
yes.
Good. I want to call up something that's around about 9 years old, but it first appeared on the website Our World in Data, and it gained a lot more traction when Bill Gates had sort of tweeted out a link to this. And if you have a look at the screen, it's essentially the causes of death in the US. It's what Americans die from, what they search on Google, and what the media reports on. And you can find that on Our World in Data, or you could even sort of Google this causes of death graphic, because it's absolutely fascinating. It's utterly fascinating, because you've got the sort of big ones there, right? Cardiovascular type diseases, cancer, and so on. But there seems to be this profound mismatch between what people think is going to kill them versus what's actually killing them. I know this is 9 years old. I know we've had a pandemic since then, but broadly speaking, this still applies right now. It'd be interesting to see a sort of updated graphic there. Tell me your immediate thoughts when you see the disparity between what the media reports on, what people fear, and what's actually killing them.
Yeah, your point is really important. This, even though that's an old slide from Our World in Data, it still applies today. Most people still don't know, and the media doesn't emphasize, that heart disease is still the #1 killer. And in fact, as I reviewed in Superagers, it's even increasing rather than decreasing in recent times in the United States, at least. But it's also the leading killer in women but most women think that breast cancer and other cancers are the leading killer. Um, so the disease that's most dreaded, which is Alzheimer's disease, if you ask, that isn't even showing up in this graph in terms of the reality that it presents, because as a condition, not necessarily as a leading cause of death. So the perception in the public and the coverage of the media, as you point out aptly, is not at all correlated with the facts, unfortunately.
Why is it increasing when it comes to heart disease when we seem to be living in an age where there's information to prevent? There are things like statins, there are things like stents that could be put in, there are entire lifestyle changes that can be made in concordance with a sort of healthcare practitioner designing this for you, and you don't have to be rich to be able to do it. How come it's still increasing then?
It's a really important question you're bringing up. And just like cancer among young people is a big spike right now, the problem is that could it be environmental? We know things like air pollution, microplastics, nanoplastics, forever chemicals, all these things increase inflammation in the body, and the consumption of ultra-processed foods that promote inflammation. So the question, of course, is it these environmental or food burdens that are going against the things that we're doing, like you mentioned? It isn't entirely clear. We've seen tremendous reduction in smoking, which is really important for heart disease. But on the other hand, we have more environmental burden and food burdens than we've had, and that's been building over the years. So it's a really important question that we don't have an answer to, but it's concordant with the increase that we've seen in cancer among the young, which is also unexplained.
What's really fascinating is, as you mentioned this, I think RFK Jr. would agree with you wholeheartedly when you talk of toxins and the environment and processed foods. Is that probably the only avenue you two would be in agreement? Tell me your thoughts on him and the powerful position he holds in this Trump administration as they set the tone when it comes to, not just the tone, they set the policy when it comes to health.
Right. This is the only thing we would agree on. And whether he's actually going to do anything about it, that remains to be seen. It's a lot of talk, but we don't know about the walk to follow up on all this. If he does do that, that would be a great accomplishment. On the other hand, all the other things he's doing to try to take away vaccines, to make up things that are not true regarding their lack of safety, to dismantle the whole mRNA platform and its funding. And the list goes on and on. He is a big proponent of peptides, such as BPC 157, which has no data. It's something that more and more people here in the United States are injecting themselves at high cost, potentially very unsafe. There's no science there in so many of the other things, and there's irrational reduction of the resources that are needed to advance the great potential we have in medicine right now. There are big cuts that have occurred at the NIH, the biomedical research that is the lead, has been the lead in the world for advancing our understanding of diseases and health. There's also big cuts at FDA, the Center for Disease Control. All these things are going to undermine our ability to get to super agers as the dominant human in the population, instead of what we have now, which is the elderly, the chronically diseased, age-related diseases among people age 60 and above, who at least have at least one of these diseases, if not more than one. So I am all for making America and the world healthy, but not through the tactics that are dominant in RFK Jr.'s strategy that he and his daily pronouncements that have no basis.
Yeah, one of our previous guests, Salim Abdul Karim, is one of the leading sort of virologists, and he was talking about the dire impact on HIV and AIDS in South Africa from the USAID cuts. So, downstream of these decisions, there seem to be global ramifications here. I just want to sort of tie this all back into what I asked you at the very beginning. We have RFK. It seems as if he sincerely believes in what he believes in. He believes in this sort of counter punch towards the mainstream of science by a more legitimate form of medicine or science, as he would put it. We have things like you mentioned at the beginning, the Mediterranean diet, right? So you've got that groundbreaking book and paper by Ansel Keys. I don't know how many years, how many years ago was that? Like 50 years ago or so? So that seems to have stood the test of time. A lot of these very sort of basic, canonical, pieces of literature and work seem to have checked out over time, right? With study after study. We have epidemiologists who, follow the data, follow the science, and yet we seem to be in a culture where to question it gives you virtue, gives you value, whether it's on diet or exercise or viruses and vaccines and so on. Are we in a very dangerous age where you have unscientific people pretending as if they're Galileo against expertise and legitimacy?
Well, yes, which was a major reason why I wrote the Super Agers book, because I wanted to get all the real evidence, the facts, the data, everything we know, what we don't know out there. Because, as you say, the misinformation is rampant. Never in the history of science, medicine, have we seen the complete bunk fabrication, disinformation like we've seen today. Part of this was amplified to a great extent during the pandemic, because there already was the anti-vaccine movement against the measles and autism, which had no basis, but then it was applied to COVID, the disease, and the vaccines, and science in general. And the public health agencies didn't help that because of very poor communication and by embracing things at times that had no good science basis. So that even added to the whole anti-science and people doing their own research and questioning everything from the medical and science community. So we're at the nadir perhaps right now. I hope over time we'll reestablish the trust. We'll be able to get more activism among the science community, because one of the things that we don't have, we're not organized, we're not funded. This is an orchestrated movement of anti-science, which has led to the anti-science people largely now running the United States biomedical enterprise. So hopefully over time, we'll get a reset to be able to get to the basic principles. What is proven? Has it been replicated? Is it completely transparent? How does it stand up to critique, as you mentioned? All these things that are fundamental in proof of scientific principles, we need to get back on that and not have policies that are based on fiction, a convenient fabrication. So we'll see. It may take time, but this is unfortunate, a very, very worrisome state that we're in right now.
Dr. Eric Topol, I'm really grateful to have had the chance to learn a little bit from you. Thank you very much for joining us on the interview.